Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 57 of Eat, Drink, Write, and Urban Fantasy Whiteboard. Today, we are going to be talking about creating novel outlines, which we've kind of talked about it a little bit before, but we've never done an episode on it. And I think it would be very helpful. But before we get to that, how was your week?
Well, we're recording this on Wednesday, which is our usual day, and it's already been a long week. And I remember yesterday I was talking to my coworker, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, tomorrow's already Wednesday," like as if Tuesday was already a long week. So, I think we're all feeling it a little bit.
Everybody's feeling the same. I think this Friday is either a new moon or a full moon. So one of the two, we're gearing up for the crazy, whatever it is.
I think it is a full moon. I saw a post on Facebook. I think it was Patricia Briggs' reading group that said it's like the full wolf moon or something like that.
Oh yeah, we're January. I think January is the wolf moon.
Yeah, so I think it is a full moon that's coming up, and this week is very hectic. I've already done a bunch of things in terms of work, and then I have also. My cat just ran across the.
I was going to say, what's wrong with your video?
And then I've also written a couple thousand words this week. So still working on Louie and Delaney book 2, and it's going really well. So
I'm impressed. That's really cool. I haven't done any writing. I can't get myself organized. It's court follow-up this week. Plus I've got court on Friday. Plus it's Granny's birthday celebration this weekend. At least there's no football this weekend. The Super Bowl's the weekend after next, so that's good. It's just I am trying to get organized.
It helps me that, like, for whatever reason, and it's a blessing, I guess, that writing for me is very therapeutic. So the fact that I am struggling so hard at work and like school and all that stuff, it's very helpful for me to just sit down and write 1,000 words. I wrote 977 today.
That's just awesome.
In between doing things. And it's something that is very calming to my mind. So like it helps that is that way for me.
Well, to give you an idea of my week, so the people that are listening can't see, I mean, you probably can't see, I have painted one fingernail.
Wow.
That's all I've had time to do. I've got this really cool new powder stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. I love it. And you start with this little base coat thing, and this makes it hard. I think it's like a gel thing, but it's powder.
Yeah.
And so I've been really excited about it. And I did one. And that's all I've had time to do.
Hey, one is better than none or something.
That's true. And this one, it's pink with little sparkles in it. It's a light pink, and it's very pretty, and I love it.
Cute.
Riley wants to do it with me at some point. And she wants to do hers deep red.
Oh, I could see that.
Which I have deep red. So
good.
We'll have to do that for her.
You'll have to send me pictures when you do that.
That is true. And then the other thing that we're trying to get set up, which is driving me nuts, is your Nana and Grandpa we've been doing Zoom, which is very uncomfortable for them, our little family happy hours that we try to do every week. And it's hard for them to sit huddled up in front of even though I've got them on a TV, they're using their TV in the kitchen. So I bought them for Christmas, the Portal TV from Facebook. I can't get her to open the box. Won't open the box. So that's frustrating. I don't know. I'm just really frustrated this week. I need to spend time on myself. I need to get myself organized. I know I will feel a ton better once I organize my office out there.
Yeah.
Working in a cluttered environment. What is wrong?
I don't know. I'm hearing things.
Is someone at your door?
No, it's out my back door. That's right behind me right here. So there's probably someone walking, or maybe they have a dog out there or something. I don't know. Also, Cat sounds crazy, so he keeps running around, and
it could be a ghost. Oh no.
Well, that's fine. I can die before I have to give all these presentations.
Whatever. That's when I get super stressed. My go-to fantasy is, it's the apocalypse and I don't have to do this stuff anymore. more.
Well, but exactly. I have to give like 6 talks this semester. So if I die before then, that's fine.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
I hear you.
So
Okay.
whatever.
What are you eating and drinking as we both eat and drink?
Yeah. I already ate my snack. So today's been very weird. I've been super hungry all day. All of January, I haven't been eating breakfast. Like I just haven't, like I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to eat anything. And so I'll pack lunch and eat dinner when I get home. And today I woke up and I was starving to death. So I ate eggs and then was starving by like 10. I ate eggs at like 8 a.m. and then starving by 10. Anyway, so I got home from work and I was starving as
You
I
don't
have been.
take lunch to work?
I do. I ate a sandwich today. I ate a sandwich
okay.
plus breakfast, which is more than it has been lately. So I got home and I cut up some tomato slices and those were my snack. And I ate those and I'm drinking a lime vodka soda.
Oh, yum.
Yeah.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Daddy has cooked dinner and I swooped in and said, hey, I have to podcast, scooped a little bit of the shrimp that he made into my little dish and said, bye. And I'm like, don't wait for me to eat. So hopefully he's eating up there, but it was fabulous. Some kind of shrimp something dinner. And I put it in for Christmas. I got these little orange spoon things.
I know what you're talking about.
These things.
They're like the Chinese soup spoons.
Yeah. And I put the little shrimp in it and took pictures. So I'll post those and ate it and it's amazing. So it's empty now. And I'm drinking my regular wine, but out of one of my Christmas wine champagne glasses.
Yeah.
You can't really see it on the video. And those of you who are listening, it's this gold on the bottom and clear on the top. So when I took my pictures, I put the little orange spoon in front of it and it made this really cool effect on the glass. So I'll post those pictures. It's fun.
That's awesome.
I have jokes.
Right. All right. Let's kick it off.
So since we're trying to organize, these are kind of organizing notes. The outlines are kind of organizing your novels. So that was kind of what I was going for.
Okay.
How does the solar system organize a party?
How?
They plan it. What do you call an organized superhero?
What?
Captain Planet.
Oh God. Why?
That's enough of that. So outlining novels. I'm really curious about this episode because I don't really outline to begin with. So why don't you start?
Yeah, well, so the reason that I suggested doing this topic is because I'm writing Louie and Delaney book 2, and I have an idea of like certain things that I want to have happen in this book. I generally know how it ends, but I feel kind of listless as I'm writing it. And I was like, I'm going to make an outline. So I started an outline and I was like, you know what, that'd be a great topic to cover as I'm currently doing one. It'd be cool to talk about. So what is an outline? Which I don't know, it seems pretty self-explanatory, but it's basically a plan with information about your novel structure, plot, characters, scenes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's essentially the skeleton of your novel.
Yeah. I mean, it includes important planning information about your novel structure, plot, character, scenes, and it can be pages and pages long, or it can be 1 page long. It can be organized in all kinds of different ways, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what an outline is.
Yeah. And then, so do we need an outline as authors? Do we need to have one? And like you said, you don't typically really outline. So absolutely not. There's no reason that you should feel that you need to have one in order to be a successful writer.
Right.
It's just helpful for a lot of people like myself. And, I enjoy them. We've talked about plotting and outlining in some of our other episodes. I think we come up with it pretty often as we're talking about character development or plotting or whatever. And like I said, yeah, I'm an outliner, at least to some degree. I am doing one right now, or at least I'm trying to. I've noticed that I like kind of fizzle out. Like I'll start one and then I'll fizzle out and I'll be like, okay, well, I'm just going to go right now. Like I get impatient.
Yeah. It's kind of, it can stagnate you. No, it can stagnate you.
Oh, yes.
It's been a long day, y'all.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I am a pantster, as you know, I think everybody knows. But I have used outlines. I've used flowcharts. I've used pictures. There's all kinds of different ways to outline. So don't be put off and say, "Oh, I'm not an outliner," because just because you're thinking of the one thing that we all learned in elementary school, that's not the only way you can outline. And we're going to tell you all about it.
Yeah, exactly. No, it works. It's about what works for you, specifically. So what's the purpose of an outline in general? Just to get started into things. It can provide a sense of direction for your novel, which is probably honestly the main reason that I like to outline. Because if I have a direction, then I can move so fast. I can write so fast if I have a direction.
Yeah, you do write fast. Like your second version of a story is so much faster than your first version, which is because basically you've outlined the whole book. Your first draft is kind of a really, really detailed outline.
Right. Well, yeah, I think the first Louis and Delaney book that I wrote took me 4 years or something. And then the rewrite took me 3 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, just an idea of like how much direction helps me specifically in terms of my writing.
Yeah, definitely. An outline reminds you where you're going. It keeps you on track. We all have those characters that take us off on these tangents, and sometimes they write themselves into a dead end.
Yeah.
And you can then go back to your outline and go, okay, this is where I was supposed to go. We're going to cut that. And, it gets us back on track with little fuss and without shutting you down and going, oh no, what do I do now? She's written me into this dead end. I don't know what to do. An outline stops that.
Right. Yeah. It can also help prevent writer's block, which is huge for me. Although I've noticed that like to get over my writer's block, I just cut a lot of stuff out, but an outline can help you just avoid that too. So, if you get stuck, it's nice to have something to look at and go, oh, this is what I was thinking for this next part, or this is what I wanted to have happen later. So I'll write, the scene that I need in order to get there. So you're not as stuck.
Especially in the middle of the book.
Yeah.
We probably should do an episode on the middle because for some people, it's the hardest part. We've talked about for some it's starting, for some it's ending, but that middle, man, I don't know. It can be tricky. You can get bogged down, and an outline to work you through that middle part is very helpful.
Yeah. Wasn't it at the conference that we heard someone call it the saggy middle or something?
I don't remember, but that sounds appropriate.
I'm pretty sure. And we were all like, yes, we understand as writers. Yes.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of muddy, the muddy middle. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it might also reduce the number of rewrites and edits that you have to do after your first completed draft, which, I've mentioned and you've mentioned, I do full rewrites. I take that entire first draft and I completely, not necessarily scrap it, but I do rewrite the entire thing. And a lot of the time
I prefer not to. I don't want to do that.
It's so satisfying to see what it becomes after I do that. I just enjoy it. A lot of the time it's because, once I have that first draft down on paper, I can see exactly what I want the novel to be. And so I'm like,
it's your outline. That's why.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I can see everything that I've written and I'm like, I know exactly where I need to change all of these things and what needs to be added in where, and I can just see it. It's all in my head. And it just works for me. So a lot of the time I end up also doing an outline after I finish my novel, my first draft.
See,
and kind of go off of that.
My book, the very first book, Harper's got me sidetracked right now, but I was working on the very first book I ever wrote when I was just out of law school. And the way I'm editing it is doing a chapter by chapter outline.
Yeah.
So that is something, I am going to have to rewrite that entire novel. There is no way around it. So I'll have to tell you all how I feel about that once I do it.
Katzen, you can't chew on my headphone cord. Sorry.
He should be up there sitting there staring at us.
That would be great. He doesn't sit still though. Can you not? Thank you. Yeah. I'm also like a partial outliner. So like a lot of like I was saying earlier, I'll write some of it and then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to start writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you said, my characters do a lot of their own thing. Like they just go off and they're like, I want to be this way. And I don't care what you put in your outline. I'm like, all right. So I end up adjusting my outline. Like it's not a set in stone thing for me. Like I write an outline and I'm like, cool. It just gives me a direction to go. And then if it changes, I'm like, all right, fine.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Usually when I do an outline, I am more of a pantster. I just like to write, and like you, I get frustrated and I'm like, this is too boring. I want to just write. I want to hear my characters. When I do outline, I don't tend to do the entire novel. I do where I'm stuck. Like if I've gotten myself stuck, then I'll outline that chapter.
yeah, I've noticed that I like to do the next chapter. So if I'm working on a chapter and it's going really well, and I'm like, okay, I need to know what comes next so that I don't lose this momentum. And then so I'll go and I'll outline the next chapter, and I'm like, what do I need to have happen here? What are the storylines I have going? You know, what needs to happen now so that other things can happen later? And that's typically what I do. Is so I also go chapter by chapter, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and then just do the next one. And so I have that one written, and then move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. You can also see where plot holes might come up or what problems you may have before you even start writing your novel if you have an outline. And this is also a big one for me. I am so huge, especially, I guess, within the past couple of years, I've gotten really big into the actual structure of a novel. I really enjoy looking at, how arcs are going to go together, how characters develop and where they need to go in order to reach their development and like that kind of thing. So this point here is like, you may hit a wall in your story or whatever, and you can find that out by doing an outline. So before, you get an idea of the flow of your novel, you get an idea of where plot holes may be, you get an idea of like all that kind of stuff before you ever get too deep into writing it.
Yeah. You do that ahead of time, which
Yeah.
is a time saver.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. If you don't outline, you really could write in a plot hole and not even see it. I mean, I think Patricia Briggs had written a plot hole in one of her novels and didn't even know it until I think her beta reader was reading it.
Yeah. And then she had to go and rewrite the whole thing.
The whole
or
thing.
like, yeah.
Yeah. So if you catch it, it saves you time and energy. I mean, there's nothing. Can you imagine how deflated you would feel if you'd written the whole book and then realized, oh crap, this isn't going to work. I have to rework the entire thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And an outline will help you see that.
Right. Well, and then because like, especially after you write the whole thing and you're like, oh no, there's this plot hole or I've hit this wall, like at this point where it doesn't make sense for these characters to do the things that they're doing, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a point and I lost it. Wow. I was mid-sentence. I have not
Yay,
had that much
vodka.
I think it's a mixture of vodka and being very tired.
Yeah.
But I don't remember my point. So I'm going to move on.
Well, I'm sure it was a brilliant point. So we can move on now.
Well, I appreciate that. Outlines can boost creativity, which like for me, I read this tip or like this point of having an outline and I was like, I don't know. I feel like an outline is very skeletal. Like it kind of lacks the creativity.
Yeah.
Like it feels very dry to me, but I guess that's actually the point. Because like when you have an outline, you can think about details when you're writing a scene instead of coming up with the scene itself as you write. And I didn't realize how much I actually do that. Because like I have my little brief chapter outline. And then as I'm writing the chapter, I'm like focusing more on the logistics of where the characters are, which characters are actually there and how they interact with each other, the dialogue and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the outlining stage is a great time for that what if game that I like to play.
Yeah.
That is the perfect time to start playing with, because you're outlining and what if I do this and that sends you this way and oh, that's not going to work. It's a great time to use that what if to help you decide on plots and arcs and, characters and settings and things that need to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Outlines can also clarify story goals. Again, one of my favorite things. Like I really enjoy, you used to make fun of me because I hated the word weaving, weaving plot lines together and
Yep.
stuff. But, for character arcs and plot lines and themes, outlines, sorry, my brain just did a double take because I said plot lines and then outlines at the same, whatever. But for all of those things to combine them and make them work well together. An outline can really help you see where those things can weave together to create a cohesive story.
Yeah. I think it can get a lot of the things out in the open before you even start, which does save that time in editing. Think about those themes, symbolism, like we did that episode on color symbolism. When you're at the outline stage, this is a great time to say, be sure to use the color blue in this particular part of the novel, because that's the whatever you're trying to get across. I don't know. We'll have to do a blue symbolism. I don't know what blue stands for, but that kind of thing. And so you can use your outline to hit the spots that will help you get that particular thing across.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can also think about potential foreshadowing and Act 1 events while having an idea of the end in mind. So I typically know the end of my stories before I start writing them. And, this way I can make sure that all of the events that lead up to that ending make sense. And I do less thinking on the revising side of my outlines with my outlines, just because I already know the end. I know what events need to happen in order to reach that end. I can put that in my outline.
I was thinking sometimes when you're doing an outline, there's a piece of dialogue that's going to be crucial to that particular part of your novel.
Yeah.
Write it down. You don't have to have the standard Word document style of outline, Roman numeral 1A, 1 little a.
Right.
It can be however the formula works for you. And it can be a place to put scene snippets and character description, or an outfit that you really want to get across because it's going to have some relevance, or, so you can put all of those. Outline is such it's a term that we get locked into.
Yeah. It feels very boxy. Like it's just a box.
And don't think of your outlines that way. Think of your outlines as just organization.
That's a really good point. I was doing my Louis and Delaney book 2 outline last night, and had a thought of dialogue that needed to happen between characters in this book, and immediately wrote it down beneath the actual outline that I was writing. So I have like a paragraph just down below where I'm like, okay, that needs to happen in here somewhere. I haven't gotten there yet in the outline, but I know that this will happen in this book. And likewise, I actually do use the typical Word outline where it's like, 1 and then 1A and then 1AI, whatever.
And I don't, because it drives you nuts when we do our notes. I use little dash marks.
Oh, bless. Yeah.
Drives her crazy.
It does. It really does. But I use that for my outlines. You can tell that I like them a lot. But I also put dialogue as one of those bullet points.
See, that's a very good point, because I think that the outline is a perfect time to log what scenes go where. We talked about before, maybe under plotting. I don't remember what our episode was, where you could use little sticky notes and you can move them around.
Yeah.
The outline time is a good time for that. As you're outlining, you get to this point and you're like, wait a minute, this needs to go before. And so that's a great time to discover it before you've poured your heart and soul into 10 chapters and you're like, crap, I gotta redo it.
Absolutely.
So use the outline, which I'm giving this advice and I don't outline.
But if you do, I think it is good advice.
I do outline, just not in the formal sense. So,
right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Again, it's like whatever works for you.
Yeah.
So that's like the main purpose points of using an outline. So what are the types of outlines? There are different types of outlines. There are templates out there. I've used a variety of methods and ended up just doing the chapter by chapter one. So the first one is the synopsis outline. And so this is like a 1 to 2 page summary of your novel, which actually would probably be helpful when you're trying to query. You already have like a rough synopsis to go back and fix.
Yeah.
And it can provide a balance of structure and flexibility. So you get the best of both worlds in there. It would include the hook, the inciting incident, major plot points, the midpoint, climactic scenes, and the resolution. And it doesn't go too into depth to allow for more freedom and wiggle room so that you can kind of adjust things.
Doesn't kill your creativity.
Yeah, exactly. It might be good for you if you like to discover your story as you write it, but you also know you'll struggle without an outline, without that direction or whatever. So it might be good for that.
I think of this kind of outline as the designer outline. Of course, I'm an artist, so I think of things differently. But a designer, they have a sketch of their workspace, but they don't know yet what's going to, quote, look right. What colors are really going to go together there. They have an idea in their head. That's kind of what this synopsis outline is. You have an idea, but until you actually sit down and write it, you don't know how it's really going to fit together, but it's enough to guide you and keep you on point.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good analogy. There's also the in-depth outline. So this would summarize each individual chapter or scene in your book, which is what I typically do.
That's what I'm having to do with my very first book.
Yeah. These will probably be thousands and thousands of words. They'll be really long, which is a good thing, especially if you like this type of outline. I like this outline because, I can think about details and logistics while I write the scene. Like I was talking about earlier, where I'm not as focused on what needs to happen. I'm more focused on I know what's going to happen. So how does it happen?
Yeah.
I've already done part of the thinking. You can focus
so much better when you're writing. You can get the sentence structure and you can get a lot of your editing done because you know exactly where it needs to go. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. I think of this as the architect, whereas the designer has the floor plan and, is going to do the inside and has this rough sketch of an idea of what color scheme and all that. The architect knows where everything is. The bathroom goes here, the kitchen goes here, everything is in its place and defined, which is what that form of outline does.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, really good analogy. I think that makes it a lot more visual than just being told this is what this outline is. So that's really cool. The next one that I have is the snowflake method. It would be helpful if I could actually say words. The snowflake method.
I am so curious about this. I have never, I think I've heard of it, but I've never really thought about it or even delved into it. So I'm curious. Tell us more.
I see it everywhere. I've looked at outline stuff before doing this episode. I've done it throughout my entire writing journey. I've looked at outlining methods and templates and that kind of thing. And the snowflake method comes up a lot. So I've seen a lot about it, but I've never tried it myself. And I remember, looking at it and being like, oh, well, maybe I should try that. And for whatever reason, I just haven't. But it is a popular one. And it was created by this guy, Randy Ingermanson. And it's an outlining method that sees you expanding your story idea little by little until you've created not only just an outline of your story's plot, but you've gained a strong understanding of your characters, your settings, your themes, scenes that need to happen, the way they interact, that kind of thing. So with this method, you would build your outline by, first asking what's the idea of your novel and write that down in just one sentence. Second, you ask who's the protagonist. Write that down in one sentence. What's the setting of your story? One sentence. And then you go back to the idea. This time you tease it out into 5 segments with one sentence for each thing. So you start to build upon what you've already got there. You start to just gradually make a snowball of ideas, and eventually you'll have an idea for the plot for your novel. Your characters will be more fleshed out, because you'll go back to your character, your protagonist, give them 5 characteristics, give them friends, give them enemies, give them a life, and so you build gradually on each one of these things, and eventually you'll have somewhat of an outline.
I like that idea.
It feels a lot more organic.
It's kind of the what if story, but how when we were trying to write together, you get to a point where you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
The what if game is fun, but when you have 51 what ifs, you've got to choose one. We never did that very well. We didn't. Could really, I think we could, it's just, we haven't. But using this snowflake method, you say, okay, this is what I'm going to choose. And then you develop on it. There is no more what ifs. You've started the what ifs and then you choose one.
Absolutely.
And then you build on it. That's less boring than the normal outline idea.
I know. And every time I think about it, I'm like, okay, but that sounds like a lot of work for me personally. Just, I don't know, for some reason.
I'd rather write.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, it sounds exhausting to write out these 3 sentences and I have to get these 3 sentences and then I have to add on to them and I have to add on. Whereas, I don't know, for whatever reason, my brain is like, no, go in chapter by chapter. And for some reason that works better for me.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I never tried the snowflake method, but I've heard a lot of people really enjoy it. And actually it does sound less boring than just going chapter by chapter.
Interesting. I didn't know what it was. So very interesting.
I swear I've probably read about it like 50 million times and it never stuck. So
yeah, well, anything with outlining, I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. Move on because I don't outline.
Right. Yeah. And that's another good point. Again, it's not necessary to have an outline.
It would probably make me a better writer to be an outliner. I may be still in the juvenile stages of writing, even though I've written for 30 whatever years. Maybe that's a clue that I'm need to outline. Maybe that's the more professional way to do it. But like you said, I think it's whatever works for you.
I think it is what works for you. Cause you can write a whole first rough draft and then be like, all right, I know where I need to go back and fix things. I know what I want my second draft to be. And you can do that without an outline. Cause pantsers will write whole books and then go back and fix them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a totally valid way to do it. My brain is just very happy with structure. So I really enjoy outlines. Okay. There's also the bookend method. And this method kind of like allows for more wiggle room. You map out like where you want your story to begin and end while choosing to discover the journey from point A to point B in drafting. So basically you know where you start, you know where you end. And then the middle is like, you get to discover it as you're going.
That's more how I am. If I had to categorize myself, I would say I'm the bookend outliner.
Yeah. And then like some important things about this method is like, be sure to define your story's premise before you get started. Know what kind of story you're wanting to tell. Once you know that kind of thing, you should have enough information to map out your story's exposition and your resolution while still retaining, that freedom to do a little discovery while you're drafting. And I feel like we could probably do a whole episode on like premise and exposition and resolution and like that kind of thing.
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. This type of outline reminds me of the gardener plotter. I think we might have talked about this before. You plant the seed, which is the idea, and it sprouts and it grows, but you don't know how many branches it's going to have. And, it has the main point, but you don't know what all these things are. And that's kind of how I write, which may not be the most professional way, but it's funny.
I think it depends on like what works for you. And if it's funny and you're writing humor, which you do, then I think it works.
I mean, the fairy stories,
they're great.
Are great. I look back at those now and I think, how did I do that? They just wrote themselves and they are very funny.
Yeah.
But I think I am the bookend gardener, so to speak. I plant the seed and just see where it goes. I do have an idea for the end.
Yeah.
I know how I want it to end, which sometimes after things happen, that ending that I had envisioned is not the appropriate ending.
Yeah. Right. Which I mean, like, I think is also fair. Like I said, I adjust my outlines. I adjust all my stuff as I go, like as I write. So.
Yeah. And then don't forget the visual approach. I am a very visual person. You aren't stuck with just outlines like we talked about, in Word format. You can do pictures. I do a lot of pictures. I think it's called a mind map or a storyboard. There's different terms.
I think storyboard is actually a really good
flow chart. Maybe I've used flow charts before. I did that for CADA. It just, for some reason, it was easier for me to see the circles with the little lines coming out of it. And I mean, that worked for me. For that story, but that's not how I did the fairy story.
Right.
I am just a very visual person. And I think there are a lot of writers out there that are visual people, color coordinated people.
Yeah.
some people might want to outline with sticky notes
Mm-hmm.
on a
Yeah.
white wall or use their whiteboard.
I've done that sticky note thing, and obviously I use the whiteboard. It's mounted on my wall behind me.
I think I'd like to try doing a not a vision board, but like a storyboard using Pinterest.
That would be really interesting, actually.
I don't know. I haven't thought it through, but I'm curious.
Huh. That is really interesting, because I've always used Pinterest as like an ideas or like a motivation, inspiration type of resource rather than outlining. Huh.
Mm-hmm. Interesting idea. I might have to play with that.
Yeah. And then just to go off of these methods, there are tons of templates out there. There's I don't know if you guys have heard of Save the Cat. I can't remember the guy who wrote it, but there are a lot of spin-off novels on that too, that talk about story templates and structure and the way that you can plan your novels by thinking about different things like character arcs and themes and that kind of stuff.
Did you get that for Christmas?
Yeah, I got one of them. It's one that's based off the original Save the Cat, which is still really cool, because I think the original Save the Cat was based more on like films and stuff, and then the one that I got for Christmas is literally for like novels.
I thought that sounded familiar.
Yeah. I also want to get Stephen King's On Writing. That's another one that I hear is
I come across that all the time from writers recommending that. And he is one of my favorite. I think he is a brilliant writer. He is a weird person, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a weird person.
I think all writers have to be a little weird.
I think you're probably right. But his writing just blows my mind. Mm-hmm. I still think of it.
Yeah.
And the way, people that have seen the movies of his books just don't understand what a phenomenal writer he is. You've got to read, you cannot translate Stephen King to movies effectively. I mean, they're good movies, don't get me wrong. And I will I'll watch every Stephen King movie that comes out, but his books are phenomenal. So I do want to read his On Writing book as well.
I do too. I'll probably buy it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And read it, but I got to read the Save the Cat novel too. But yeah, so there are lots of templates out there. I've tried a bunch of them. A lot of the time it feels too dry to me, because like templates oftentimes end up in Excel sheets, and I use Excel sheets for things like keeping track of my characters and descriptions and that kind of thing. So like it just feels like a little dry to put a story outline.
Excel feels it. I do not feel creative. Daddy, your father, is a huge Excel expert.
Yeah.
He helps me with my job all the time. My law firm, he has done all kinds of Excel sheets for me that I use all the time. Yeah. But it's not creative enough. It's not fluid enough for me to want to use it as my outlining program.
I think that's my issue too, is like when I use a pre-made template, like one that I haven't made myself, I feel very boxed in, and feel like, oh, I have to do it this way because the Excel sheet says I have to.
Yeah.
Which is like, Excel sheets probably work for some people. It just doesn't work for me, but they're out there.
One of my legal secretaries was an Excel queen. Excel was everything to her. That was how her brain worked. She was very analytical.
Yeah.
And I am more on the creative end of things. I mean, I think I'm logical, but there is a difference between being analytical and that Excel oriented. And I do need some kind of structure. So, but color works for me. But I think the bottom line is what every outline needs to have. If you're going to do any kind of outline, you need to know what the premise of your book is. You need to know the setting. You need to know your characters and the basic plot art. Yes, I can speak.
Yeah.
You kind of have to have a general idea of the beginning, the middle, and the end. Middle, not so much necessarily like the bookend one you were talking about.
Right.
But you've got to have some basics for starting that outline.
Yeah.
If you're going to use one, which you don't have to.
Right. And I think I've talked about it in other episodes, but a lot of the ways that I come up with outlines myself, like for general skeletal outlines that aren't as in depth as my chapter by chapter ones, I write down all of the major plot points that I have in my head. And then I put them in chronological order in terms of when they happen in the book. And then I fill in the in-betweens where it's like, how do I get from this point to this point? What needs to happen in here in the middle? And then by the end of that, you generally have a decent outline for where you need to go.
I need to work on my structure. My outlines a lot of times consist of putting dialogue in the middle of my notes. I pulled my notes on my phone, my phone notes, and I see these things and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking?
I used to be really bad about that.
What did that mean? Because at the time when I'm writing it down, I think it's brilliant, but I'm in the middle of something else. And so I try to jot that idea down. And, I can scroll through. I still have that very first sentence from my fairy book. It's in my notes. And it stayed in there for years.
Yeah.
If I never see another freaking fairy again, it'll be too soon. That has been in my notes forever. So that's not really an outline, but it's you need to have some place to keep your thoughts on a particular novel, whether it's Pinterest or an outline or just files in your computer.
Yeah.
Outline is a very loose term. So don't try to force yourself to conform. Writers are not conformists.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're creative people with lots of other people in our heads.
I know. Sydney makes fun of me whenever I tell her I'm writing. She'll come back and text me a couple of hours later and she'll be like, so how are your personalities? I'm like, they're all being bitches, but it's fine.
Yep. Your dad does that too. He's like, which person is that's talking, because I've got lots of them in there.
I do too. And they all just like to talk, and some of them are louder than others. And I'm like, you know what? These two will not shut up. Louie and Delaney have been talking a lot lately, obviously, and they'll just have full on conversations. And I'm like, shush, stop. Like, and it's useless. Well, it is, but it's a lot of the time it's useless conversation. That'll never make it into a book, but I do often write down those bits and pieces. And
it helps you get to know them better. And I mean, although you know them really well because you're on book 2, but it helps you categorize what the issues are and the conflicts are in your particular book, because these conversations that they're having in your head are meaningful that way. You're learning more about them.
Yeah. And a lot of the time those conversations do end up in an outline. So
yeah. That's all I've got. I mean, outlining it's what you make of it.
I actually really enjoy it. I really enjoy the structure. It makes me feel like my writing is going somewhere, like I'm not just floundering, is the main purpose that I use them. They also help me to, like I said, write faster. I
always start really well. I have no problem starting books, which a lot of people do. Yeah. They don't know where to start. They stare at the blank page. They can't do it. I don't have that problem.
Yeah.
So where outlining comes into play for me is when I've written myself to a point where oh crap it, I have to figure out what the plot really is now. That's where outlining works for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whatever floats your boat.
Whatever floats your boat. I do have an interview question.
Oh.
Which of your novels was easiest for you to write, and did you outline it? Which I'm going to guess that you didn't, but maybe.
No, they're all easy to write in their own ways. They all talk to me. It's like magic. It comes in through the top of my head and comes out through my fingers on the keyboard.
I don't know about that, but
they're all very easy to write. And I laugh and I love to write. I enjoy it. The editing is not so easy. That's and so I do remember in CADA, I resorted to flowcharts. I was really stuck and I couldn't figure out what to do. And I had to have something visual. The writing down the what ifs wasn't working for me. So for her, I used the flowchart method. I don't remember having that much trouble with the frickin' fairies, other than I needed that epiphany at the end to tie it all together in a pretty package.
Right.
I knew what I wanted to happen. And outlining wasn't going to help that happen.
Right.
That required that epiphany, which I ended up having at some point.
Yeah.
So I don't really outline the latest, the very first book that I wrote. That's the one that I'm really working on outlining. And
Nice.
it needs it because, but I don't even remember a lot of the characters in that story. It's been so long since I've read it. So
Yeah.
as I'm reading it, I'm writing down the key points from that chapters so that I can go back later and say, that's not needed, that is needed. I need to rework this. This doesn't even belong in this spot. So I'm doing a chapter by chapter outline right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
The easiest one for me was Louis and Delaney. For whatever reason, those characters are just very
Yeah.
fluid. They
It's
are
by far your best book, I think, although they're all good.
I agree. Well,
there
thanks.
is just something about Louis and Delaney that, and
I don't know.
did you
There's a
outline
spark.
it?
I don't think I did at first. I legitimately don't remember starting that novel. I don't remember starting it. I just don't. But because they wrote themselves, they really do
went
write
through
themselves.
the top of your head and out through your fingers.
No.
Oh, okay. See, she's saying no, but she didn't like the weaving thing either. So this is going to come around.
It's not.
It is going to come around.
Mm-mm.
My finger's right. My brain doesn't write.
No.
I don't even know what's going to happen. It just happens. My fingers do it. Okay. No, never mind.
No. No, they write themselves. I think towards the end of the novel, where I had about 30,000 words left, I actually did go through and create an outline from what I had already written, and then finished the outline from there. And I think I wrote that 30,000 words in like 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I was in the middle of field work at my old job and that kind of thing, and managed to finish that book that fast, just because I did do that outline, because I knew then where I wanted it to go. Mm-hmm. Louis and Delaney was by far the easiest book to write for me. I have been trying to write Aiden, and she talks to me. She's very chatty. She's very sassy, very stubborn. And that stubbornness is killing me, because I am struggling so hard to actually get the words on the page. Whereas I'm writing Louis and Delaney 2 right now, and I just casually wrote 1,000 words today.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah. I also have a sentence challenge.
Okay.
So the sentence for this week, if you're interested in doing it, write a page using this sentence, double space, single space, doesn't really matter. The sentence is, the structure was all wrong.
I like it.
Yeah. So I'm trying to also give a theme to the sentences to the week that we're talking about. So the outline is structure. The structure was all wrong.
I love it. That kind of makes my brain, I might have to actually write this one.
Do it. There was a year where I wrote a sentence per day, a sentence page per day, and it was really good for developing my writing skills. And helped me a lot. So.
Our paragraph writing is invaluable. We've tried to do it. There was one year, Halloween is always the time, because I'm a very horror-oriented person. Mm-hmm. I really like Halloween and the witchy and the ghost and the paranormal. And so that just comes naturally at Halloween time.
Yeah.
We usually at Halloween do really well, but for some reason this last year, well, it was COVID, which you would think would give us more time.
No, I was less creative during COVID.
I was too. COVID has killed my creativity for some reason. It's just, and I'm so ready for it to be over, and I'm so COVID tired.
It's fatigue, pandemic fatigue.
I want to go out on a date with your father.
I know.
I mean,
but anyway.
So thank you all for listening. I don't even know what our website, eatdrinkwritepodcast.com. I've started on the YouTube to actually post that, because I'm always afraid I'm going to forget. Come visit us at our Patreon, patreon.com/EDW. That's where you can support us. It can be $1 a month. Anything that you can do to help us would be wonderful. I guess we'll see you next time. I have totally had a brain fart. So
wow. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
All right. See you next time.